two observations, one less serious, one more so. The first is that it seems like you have a clear way of getting in touch with VCs. Start having kids and put them into soccer and the right schools. So that seems like it works. Stunningly enough, I do think it actually does. The other thing is this, right? So you mentioned young entrepreneurs, and I think we have the stereotype in our mind of young entrepreneurs. I like to joke that sort of the stereotype in people's minds is two 20-something guys who are graduates of Stanford's computer science department, and probably one of them is Caucasian, one of them is East Asian, and that's sort of this pattern that people have seen over and over again. And yet, I look around the room, I'm like, I don't think everyone fits into that category. Who here says I'm not necessarily young as an entrepreneur? So one of the big questions is, again, there's this pattern matching at work. What's the best way for people who don't look like that stereotypical Stanford pair to stand out and to attract the attention of investors? I have my own answer, but I'll let you guys answer first.
Well, I was going to say that I think the, all in all, that is the stereotype as if you think about, HBO, Silicon Valley, or TechCrunch, but I think those things do a complete disservice to Silicon Valley and what this area is about, and so, I'd say, that pattern isn't necessarily true, and it still is the case. There is a pocket of entrepreneurship around certain types of companies, social media companies, gaming companies, and the like, where that I think more fits. Not as true in software as a service, not at all true in systems, not at all true in the in the data center, not at all true in a whole bunch of other categories. So I think in the end you got to be who you are. You still have to be the right person to found and lead this phase of the business. You got to be self-aware and understand your own limitations, and therefore surround yourself with people who complement you. You've got to build your community of influence, but I think it's a complete misnomer that the only people who create companies and get funded are 20-something males. So I look at the last set of things that we've done, and one was a 24-year-old who paired up with a 50-year-old to complement, as COO. One is a 29-year-old Chinese American woman. One is a 45-year-old African American man partnered up with a 50-year-old from the Canary Islands. I mean, it's all over the map. Doesn't matter.
I think Greg's got a really good point here, which is the entrepreneurial community has changed really dramatically. So what I point to, and I think you were mentioning this, is women are 52% of the population, and my wife will tell you way smarter than us. So the amount of women entrepreneurs as a percentage of the people that we're backing is increased really dramatically, which I think is a wonderful thing. And I used to joke that when I got into business, we would look for Indian American first immigrants, ill-clad in boat shoes, and to go to something interesting. That's completely changed. So to Greg's point, like the kind of the classic way people looked in terms of the demographics has dramatically changed. And I think the most interesting piece is just how women entrepreneurs are a bigger and bigger piece of what we're doing at Crosslink.
Yeah, we did some data on, we looked at it and we published it, but it's around the types. We tried to create categories. We looked at women versus men, we looked at young versus old, we looked at top schools versus not. And we did find that across all the data, the only people we should be investing, well, first we found we should only invest in entrepreneurs named Travis, and then we pulled that out. And so we can't, it skewed the data. So then what came out was we should only invest in, women under the age of 25 who went to a top 10 university, right? But I think that's looking backwards at just the data that we've created, and it's not how we make decisions. And I think those are two different things. There's probably some pattern matching and cognitive bias that just exists that that we all have. But I do think that what is really compelling is the idea that the founder's working on. I think their unique insight, where that comes from. So not just their market, but their motivation. And so if you're typical in a SaaS business, you had this experience at a company and it was this painful thing, and you think it should be a purpose-built product that all these companies like the one you worked at should buy, in order to have that experience, you probably are working in industry for 5-10 years. And so I think that really what matters for entrepreneurs to think about is, how do you show the investor that you have a unique insight, and how do you move them from sort of that fear of failure to a fear of missing out? And it doesn't really matter what you look like or how old you are, or what your gender is. It's how well you tell that story and that narrative.
I think the first round of capital research that you guys did is probably the best, research I've ever seen on the venture industry. It was an incredible piece. Yeah, it was great. I sent around. I mean, it was. I would definitely look for that and take some notes on it. But I think when we talk to entrepreneurs, it's less about sort of the stereotypes and what have you. We're really focused on people's backgrounds and what they've accomplished. I think we all are, and I wouldn't be afraid to tout that when you're in a meeting. Many times people just, they have a bio slide. It's usually at the end. I'd put it first. Talk about who you are, what you've done, what you've accomplished. I think the number one thing that investors look for. It's it's management and markets, usually in that order. Sometimes people look at markets first, but it always comes down to the management, in my book, and typically the CEO who's going to be making those calls. So I really just toot your own horn when you're out there.